Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Visual Div. I'm here with my co-host Ailín. How you doing, Ailín?
Good. I think you're getting louder every time you do that. But I'm good.
My podcast consultants tell me to get nearer the mic and speak clearly and loudly. So that's what I'm doing.
Are they telling us to not talk over each other the way we do all the time?
Yes, they are. See, I did a nice little pause there to let you...
Perfect pause.
Perfect pause. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna follow Jack's lead here, and he does remind me every week that this week we're gonna talk about something super interesting called HTMX. I'll do a proper introduction in a minute, but listeners, if you're interested in HTMX, keep listening. If you're not, have a great day. Anyway, how you doing, Ailín? How's the week been? How has the week been? No, I know this, not talking over each other, but you have to answer the question. How's the week been?
Yeah, it's good. Busy, but good. Just product, keeping on top of the product, finding a few pretty major bugs and just trying to keep on top of them. One particularly big one I think it's got to do with the firewall of the user. So it's kind of hard to figure that out, but it's a pretty big issue because there's some third party software not running for us. But yeah, overall it's good though.
We've lost you there. Oh, you're back. You're back. Right, we can cut that bit out. Well, my editing skills aren't that good still. But
well, I was talking.
But you also
this software will have it recorded.
But you had your daughter's first birthday, so you had a nice day off to eat cake and
that was nice.
Yeah, hang out with friends.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Did you find that your daughter didn't care too much about a cake or a candle?
It was actually really funny. She had no idea what to do with any of the wrapped gifts. And she just stood at the door when she woke up from her nap and saw that there was like 9 people in her kitchen and was just like, who the fuck are you and what the fuck are you doing here? Was the confused expression on her face. But yeah, it was nice. Like my sister came up and heap of people came over. I was so surprised with the amount of people that came to a 1-year-old's birthday party on a Thursday. But it was all like done and dusted by like 5:30 because that's what happens now. People have to bring their own kids home and keep to a routine. So yeah, at like 6 o'clock, I was just like, oh, it's time to go to bed.
Well, you realise that's the parents' night out is basically the afternoon birthday party is now the new parents' night out. So
yeah, I suppose that's why a few people turned up. A lot of people turned up. They picked up the kids and after school or creche or whatever and just popped up to us. It was actually pretty funny because Mavian had no idea what to do with the presents, but all the other kids knew what to do with the presents and they were just like, just open the presents. What? And they were like, can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? Like almost elbowing each other towards the presents to try and get to them. And there's just something like they just go absolutely insane when they see a wrapped gift. It's like, it needs to be ripped open right now. But yeah, pretty funny.
Whereas when they get to our age, they sort of open it really carefully so they can reuse the wrapping paper for the next toddler party that they go to next week.
Yeah.
No, but you were also involved this week with being an agony aunt for myself as I was sending out quite a few client proposals this week, and they had quite a few different interesting pricing structures to them that I was trying to put together to cater for the different projects. And let's just say the WhatsApp group that yourself and I are in with Ben got quite opinionated and heated. And there's definitely going to be a need to do a a full-on pricing episode sometime soon where we can really put the gloves on again and really debate the best way to put proposals together for clients. So
yeah, like that's one that my approach to that is just like keep it simple for me. I just try and I basically just rinse and repeat stuff, and yeah, we should definitely do something on that, because yeah, we have slightly different views on it, because the way, yeah, I just try and keep it simple for me so that I can get things out quickly, and then potentially make iterations on if the client comes back to you. That's the way my approach is with it. But
yeah, no, you've as the week's gone on, I've definitely wished I took that approach, but we're all good. We're all good. Anyway, getting back to today's episode, back in October, so October the 18th to be exact, Bryant, who is one of the co-founders of Webflow, tweeted this really interesting tweet, and it caught my eye. It caught a lot of people's eyes, actually. It got 60 likes, which is, fairly big, 21 bookmarks. But the tweet was, I would love to see someone explore the potential of building a Webflow designer extension that utilizes HTMX to create full-blown apps. That's a bit of a mouthful. And then add some attributes, and boom, you can perform an Ajax. And then he includes a video and puts a few other links there. But I saw it and I thought, HTMX? What the hell is HTMX? I Googled it. I found a page that talked about HTMX. But to be honest, it went straight over my head. Your tweet was, oh my God, this kind of magic makes me really happy. So today, you're going to tell us why this magical HTMX makes you really happy. And maybe while doing it, you can enlighten us on this HTMX and how it fits in with the Webflow ecosystem as we know it.
I'm just going to start off with this, that I think that tweet is as cathartic for me as finding Webflow. I think that tweet is...
Oh, we're getting deep. We're getting deep straight away.
I think it's big. The other thing I'm going to say is I think that understanding HTMX and Webflow is potentially a better solution than learning DevLink. But very, very early in my exploration of the two. So all of the limitations of Webflow are because, not all of them, but quite a few of them, in terms of getting custom code and using other frameworks, is how do you get them into Webflow? So the DevLink solution currently, and I know they're exploring how to get React into Webflow, is that you take Webflow out of Webflow and you deploy it locally or in your own framework using React. When you're using Vue.js, you use custom embeds and you add Vue into the custom embed and it does its job. And then we've got things like just vanilla JavaScript. You either use it in the footer or the header, custom embeds, and then you use something like Slater, or you use something like the traditional stack with VS Code and GitHub, and you can connect it through APIs that way. So HTMX, in very simple terms, is, and the X stands for like extended HTML. How do you add more power to HTML? And if you look online, there's a lot of like chat, you'll see all these clickbait things like HTMX is the React killer, HTMX is this. But it's essentially a very lightweight JavaScript library that uses attributes to trigger functionality. And if there's anything that works really, really well with Webflow, is attributes. We've got Finsweet attributes. We've got MemberStack that bases its whole product on attributes. There's other companies, I think Refocus have like a library of JavaScript library that works with attributes. So yeah, like the idea of understanding how an attribute is used and triggers something and makes our websites or products do different things is it's something that comes not naturally to Webflow developers because it's more a part of this ecosystem and how we build things.
Okay. So what is HTMX though? What is it? What's like to the newbies out there?
So HTML. So we'll talk about that tweet. So HTMX triggers at the very one particular level AJAX requests. Now an AJAX request.
An AJAX, other than a football team, what is AJAX?
So an AJAX request is pulling HTML instead of data in the form of JSON. So you're pulling HTML from a deployed page to another page. A few years ago, Timothy Ricks did a really, really good video on how to use HTMX to give app-like functionality to your Webflow projects. So in very simple terms, an AJAX request is if you've got one page, like your home page, and then you've got another page called your profile, an AJAX request pulls that page on and replaces content on the home page. So it pulls the HTML over and replaces content on the page that you're currently working on or using. So what it allows you to do is one single page applications. So a single page application is what React would do, is that you would have a template with your header, your footer, your navigation, and inside that template, stuff happens based off of actions that the user does. But with React and Vue, you're sending data in the form of JSON, and that is then finding an element, which is HTML, and doing stuff with that HTML element. With AJAX, the data is deployed to another page, and you're pulling that pre-configured element of HTML onto your into your template. So it's a slightly different way.
Okay, so
you're pulling HTML, not data, into your template.
Okay, so in like really simple terms, if you're on a page and if you take an action, for example, that action might trigger something on a server to be carried out, and when you refresh that page, for example, that the new information comes back from the server and displays on the page. But what AJAX allows you to do is essentially access stuff from another page, from an event, for example, and without refreshing the page, it allows you to bring that element into the page without having to refresh the page.
Yeah,
essentially.
That's exactly it. It's not essentially. That's exactly it. So the reason why this is potentially really powerful for Webflow is that when you publish a Webflow website, you have multiple pages that are deployed from the Webflow server as pages. Like the data is deployed as HTML for us. So instead of us having to work around how to turn that data into JSON or get into the Webflow CMS API, you can find that data and use it. So it does a huge amount of heavy lifting for us that we don't, which means you don't need to go into like back-end custom code or even use client-side JavaScript.
Okay, so yeah, because I'm looking at the HTMX sort of explain a website, and with that context, there's a little quote here. Say, when a user clicks on this button, issue an AJAX request to a clicked and replace the entire button with the HTML response. So what we're saying is there'll be some HTML sitting on another page on that domain. Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be on that domain, I suppose. It could be on another domain.
It doesn't need to be that domain. This is where I'm like super excited.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so it doesn't need to be on that. So there's a HTML response coming back, and then you render that HTML on that same page that you click the button on, for example, and you don't need to replace the entire screen or load up the entire screen. All you're doing is essentially loading up that little HTML that you brought in. That's exactly. Okay. That's pretty powerful. That's amazingly powerful.
So, and if you think of how
but the HTMX thing is super simple as well, isn't it?
It's
relatively
straightforward. Yeah. It gets
compared to maybe, say, as you said, like using a Vue setup or a React setup. It's a little bit more straightforward, and you don't need maybe as many dependencies in the background as you would with a React or a Vue setup.
Yeah, it is. Well, instead of thinking of it as less complex, think of it as it's adding functionality to your HTML. And for Webflow developers, we develop a UI and we deploy HTML and CSS. So the UI that we have allows for customization through. It just fits really well with HTMX because it's attribute based, and it just gives us that. It is for a lot of things. It's very, very similar to what React would do. I'll just give like a very simple example. You've got a navigation. You've got homepage, about page, profile. Okay? When you click on each of those pages, you can build out that product whatever way, normally the way you would in Webflow. You build out those pages. Every single time you click on homepage, about the button, the whole page has to render. And that's fine, but what that does is it just means that if you got certain complexities, that they also have to re-trigger every single time. But if you can use a GET request that says get this section and replace it with, get the about section and replace it with the home section. And what it means is that your header doesn't have to rerun or reload every single time. And that the navigation bar doesn't have to reload every single time. And it just creates that power that's there potential that you can use with something like React. Now it can be very top level, but it can get super complex. You can start thinking of like having elements that only load under certain events if a user has done something through something like Webflow membership. Like if they have booked a meeting, then it can trigger a response that shows a meeting card, for example. And that meeting card can sit somewhere else in your Webflow project. We'll call it / meeting card. And you can say, after this event, find this element and put it on the homepage or the user's profile, which you can do that with React and Vue, but it fits much better with HTMX.
Okay, yeah. So I was just thinking. I wasn't thinking out loud. I wasn't making any noise. I was thinking in my head. One of my clients has their LMS on a different platform to Webflow. So we use Webflow for all the marketing, and then they have an LMS. And one of the oddities that we have is that you can buy courses on the marketing site, but it pushes all the transactional events you have to do on their LMS site. and it's always not. There's a symbiotic sort of journey going on. Is that sometimes you're on the marketing site and sometimes you're on the LMS site. But when you're logged in on the LMS site, you get this little sort of logged in character. You get your little profile picture and your name, and then although we make it look and feel as closely as possible to looking like they're the same site, they look slightly different, because as soon as you go back to the marketing site, where there's lots of information and articles and knowledge centers and stuff, it looks like you're logged out. And we find it hard to present that in a way that we can't say log in, because they're already logged in. And if they click log in, it will take them to the LMS where they're already logged in. So there could be an instance where we use this type of functionality to bring in that little piece of HTML with their logged in credentials into the Webflow navbar, so it always looks like if they're logged in, they're logged in. And it's amazing. That's a little simple UI UX change that could be done with this type of functionality. It's
so with that, potentially it could, but you have to remember that you're pulling the HTML over, or you're pulling the page over. So if you do something like that, you could be pulling more than what you bargained for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because that sort of let's call it a little HTML widget or whatever has got deep roots into the LMS app, I suppose.
But
yeah.
In theory, you could target a particular thing and display that on your Webflow site. In theory, that's possible. But the thing is you're pulling HTML over. You're not pulling CSS over. So you could end up with a funky looking, something funky.
Yeah, okay, because although with that HTML you're bringing, because a class name is HTML essentially, so you'd have to align.
Yeah, but you're not pulling the CSS.
You're not pulling the CSS file over yet. So unless it's inline styles or I get you. So what other examples are there where something like, because this feels like not low hanging fruit, but it feels like a something that because when DevLink came out, I won't lie, there's two camps, I think. The ones who got excited because they have exposure to React and they know the power of React, and then the ones who are sort of like, I don't really know what this means. Does this, is it only because if I work with a SaaS company who use React, maybe they want to bring some of their components in, but not really that excited about it. Whereas the HTMX, the way you present it, makes me feel like it's something that I could use on projects where I'm working with companies that don't necessarily have this big ecosystem of developers, and it's built on React and all this kind of stuff. And I can use it in the sort of safety of the Webflow environment without thinking too much about other dependencies or having it run locally on my machine, or those kind of things that the no code Webflow process protects you from in a certain respect. So this feels like it's a little bit more obtainable from a functionality point of view and understandable point of view than, say, using React or Vue. Would that be right, or am I maybe simplifying it too much?
Premise of HTMX is to provide more functionality to buttons, forms, and links. So if that's what we have on the front end. You have get requests and posts and pushes, but it's adding additional features to that. So normally we just use, not everybody, but a lot of people have connected a Webflow form to Airtable, for example. So that's sending data through a form over to Airtable. So in theory, You can reverse engineer that into Webflow. You can get that data from Webflow. Not in theory, you can definitely do that, but with HTMX, you can get that data as HTML in a way. So it's adding additional power to concepts that we understand: forms, buttons, and links. And the output of that, a lot of that stuff is it's JavaScript customization. Now, I'll give you simple examples. Not instead of going like down this, like it's React, it's Vue, it's all this. I think it will be able to compete with DevLink. But in simple things, limitations of Webflow. Having a CMS tab. You can create a CMS-based tab using HTMX. Not a problem. Having CMS categories with CMS content inside those categories on one page, where you've got like heading 1, a load of data underneath heading 1, heading 2, and a load of data underneath. HTMX can solve that problem. CMS slider. I haven't built one out yet, but potentially it can solve that problem. So they're just use cases straight off. Like even for your current Webflow projects, you can completely make custom tabs, CMS driven, custom. What's the other thing? And even nesting. It completely sorts out nesting.
I was about to say,
I think 3-4 times deep with this. It's nuts.
Because essentially, it's the way a lot of Finsweet solve a lot of these problems is, and HTMX is JavaScript underneath the hood, isn't it? It is JavaScript.
Well, it's a JavaScript
that's doing the lifting. Yeah. So,
but instead of the
Finsweet attributes,
it's living in your HTML.
Living in the HTML, but just to kind of, because you flew quite close to like CMS combined with functional components like tabs or sliders, and you see like Webbae at the moment is working on I think it'll be a Webflow app, which is going to be a CMS powered slider with the Finsweet team, and obviously they've got a really good record at bringing lovely solutions to limitations of Webflow and using attributes to do that. And I suppose what we're saying is HTMX is almost would allow us in more simple terms to build our own Finsweet slider CMS execution without relying on the Finsweet JavaScript. Essentially, it's kind of similar, isn't it? Because they say, okay, you've got to put that CMS at the bottom of the page, then so that's got to be on the same page. Whereas actually with HTMX, you can have.
So the Finsweet solutions, a lot of the times the Finsweet solutions, not all of them, but a lot of times you have your element that is going to have the content loaded into, and then you have your CMS content underneath that, and it's a load or a swap. It pulls from here and moves it to the element that you want. Perfect solution for a Webflow problem. Really good. I've used their solutions loads of times. But what this does is that it doesn't live there, so you don't have that flick that sometimes you get, and then you don't have to cache that, so it doesn't happen again. If you can use a GET request that is triggered on page load, so it pulls it straight away. So as the HTML is read, it pulls the data that you want, or the HTML elements that you want, into the right place. Another really cool thing is you can have infinite scroll. So if you have a massive website and you're like, this homepage is huge and you want to infinitely scroll for whatever reason, but you don't want it to load at one time, you can just have the hero section load, and then on user scroll, the next section loads. And on user scroll, the next section loads. And all those things are living in different parts of your Webflow project. And it means your website is super fast. Now, there's complications because when you pull Webflow HTML, like if you have to target a link. So it's the same as changing a page. You click on the link, the href goes, finds that page and replaces the one you're in. So HTMX does the same thing. But if you target a full link in Webflow, you're going to get the header, you're going to get the body, you're going to get the footer, you're going to get everything. So you can, if you do it wrong, you can duplicate even the Webflow native JavaScript. And if you do it wrong again, you can make these duplications like infinitely. So you have to make sure that you're targeting elements within that HTML.
I was about to say there's a dog snoring or dreaming in the background.
My dog is on that moment. Yeah, my dog just started whining.
No, I just in my head I've like the possibilities. So I could have lots of different pages with content on them, and I could magically on one button click bring a variety of those pages or sections from those pages into the page I'm on almost in a random manner, almost, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could have there could be all there's like, you know, whether that be useful or not, I don't know, but it's the idea that I'm not constrained to just interacting with the content or utilizing the content on that canvas on that page without, if, as you said, if I want to go and access other content that might be relevant to that user journey, I normally have to take them to a new page. Whereas this, for example, say for example, a good example is sign up for a demo, for example. You see this button at the top of a lot of pages, and then essentially you click on the button, it goes to a page, and you've got a form on there which allows you to sign up for a demo for the product. You could have a situation where you want to put that button in lots of different places on the site, and now with HTMX you could have that button just straight away load up that form, or insert a little section that has that form on it, and now you're not even dealing with Webflow components. You've essentially made your own little completely flexible access it anywhere component that whenever I click on that button, I get this form appear as a nice little component that slots into wherever I am.
That's a really good example. If you're to do a modal currently on Webflow, you set it to display none, and it sits there. It's there on your page, display none, but it renders. What you can do with HTMX is you can have a page called /modal, and then you can have a button on your current page, like what you were saying there, that says click to get modal. And in that, there's a get request that's hx get, and that equals /modal. And that modal will, with a bit more, like I'm being quite simple here, but straight away what that will do is that modal will replace that whole page. But if you add a few more attributes, you'll be able to make that modal overlay on your page. And it doesn't live there initially. It lives there right now. And then the X button, instead of just hiding and displaying none the modal, it gets rid of the modal. And where that can come really interesting is if you have huge amounts of CMS items and each of those have a pop-up. Like the way we would do it in Webflow now is that each button has its own version of that modal because it's through the CMS, and we've duplicated and triplicated and we've got unlimited amounts of things. But now you'd be able to request that modal from its own part of the website and potentially inject the correct data from the CMS into that based on the button click, which is
really powerful. Okay, and here's another idea. Maybe this is doable or not. So I click. We've got a homepage, and I click on a Google ad from a certain keyword, and that by clicking on that ad, it categorizes me as a certain customer type. Like I'm going to a sports website, then they're marketing sports athlete tracking software, and I click on the advert that's about soccer. So that attribute comes, that value will come through on the URL. And could I use HTMX to bring through content related to soccer onto that page because I've got that value come through on the URL? So if they come through on a Gaelic football URL, then I could tell the HTMX function, go, hey, look, they've arrived from this place, bring in this Gaelic football content.
Potentially, yeah. Like if you have that, if the GET request, you can add URL parameters to your GET requests, and if you have that set up correctly with the right pages built that are related to those that URL, then yes, you could.
Okay, so like boiling it down, then the excitement around HTMX, because there hasn't been a lot. I saw that tweet from Bryant there back in October. There doesn't seem to be that much fuss around. Well, there definitely isn't a lot of fuss around the Webflow community. Now, I'm not surprised there, because the Webflow community, although has a lot of technically advanced developers involved, we don't talk a lot in technical terms like you would maybe if you're involved in the code front end code community. But what is it? Where are we going to see the application of HTMX that is really going to make everyone sit up and go, "Oh wow!" Like wow, okay, this needs to be part of my stack, because there has been recently a good amount of justified fuss, probably around like the Wix plus Webflow plus Xano. You got the Black Peak guys doing it. You've got Glenn has a course on it. Wix. I keep saying Wixed. I told a client today. I said, "Oh, we could bring in Wix." They must have looked at me thinking, "Oh, what is he talking about?" Whizzed. Sorry. Yes, Whizzed. WWX. Yeah, WWX. So you've got that, a lot of talk around there. This feels like it runs in the same sphere as that, but should Webflowers pay attention to this HTMX and start investigating it? Is it worth their while, or is it an edge case where you're only really going to use it if you're building sort of web apps that have a lot more, interactive, deep functionality?
Well, isn't that the case with Wiz? Like it's that's the case with MemberStack. So what I'm exploring at the moment is the Webflow membership plus Webflow logic plus HTMX. And the reason I'm exploring that at the moment is Webflow membership is server side. We were talking about that before, which means it's more secure than other gated software. And same with Webflow logic. It's limited, but it's secure. That provides post requests, or you can do a lot of posts and connecting with webhooks using Webflow logic, and then potentially pulling that back into Webflow using HTMX. So that's what I'm checking out at the moment to see if that can work. So currently with the product that I've built, I'm moving as much as my client side JavaScript over to HTMX, and it's working really, really well.
Okay, so maybe in the future when your product launch and has settled down a bit, there might be room to explore those examples a bit more. But one thing I've just seen on their website, I've just seen something on their website. This is a HTMX website, sorry guys, we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but this is super interesting. They talk about CSS transitions. So using CSS transitions without JavaScript. So think of this: you have a card, and it has a class of card blue. When you roll over that, or you click on a button, that class changes to class red. That can be done with HTMX because then it will just use the CSS. It's essentially replacing the HTML, which includes the class name, and then you can have a nice transition, bit of CSS, nice transition that changes from blue to red or red to blue. And you start to have a really powerful way of adding cool little animations based on CSS into your Webflow site, without having to rely heavily on an animation framework.
Yeah.
Again,
I've done a little bit of
it's hard to
the
explain this
animation
without.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to sell it as an animation tool because like Webflow animations are fucking class. So that's not what I'm exploring. I'm looking at it's basically a client-side JavaScript replacement, and how I can utilize that as much as possible.
okay. I think I've got a fair idea. I've definitely got enough to put it on my investigative to-do list, and also to bug you for show me how this thing works in real life list. And maybe it's we need you said there's are there any Webflowers out there? Have they got tutorials on this, or is it still very new?
Everything that I've been looking at is Django based, so it's super interesting. Like so Django is like pretty much client side. It's not really front side. It's server side. Django is all server side. It's not really.
I thought it was like one of the movies that The Rock has appeared in. It sounds like one of those kind of movies.
But it's a super cool framework. And what I've been doing is learning how to use HTMX with Django and reverse engineering that for Webflow. And that means I'm starting to think of Webflow like fucking Django, which is kind of strange. Within like the limitations that Webflow have. But it's possible to give way more power to the Webflow CMS. That's what I'm kind of thinking. And that means you're secure in the Webflow ecosystem.
Okay. So I think this is really interesting from I'm just concepting just the last couple of episodes we've talked about branching the other day, and that was in the context of non-enterprise customers not having access to the branching functionality. But the way we talked about it was the development world is often a case of you just pick what framework you want to use. Sometimes you mash them together, you use them for different purposes, front end, back end, across the full stack. But in essence, the developer can find interesting ways to make one framework work from the back end to the front end and vice versa. And that, you get new frameworks coming up. What we're talking or touching on here is that Webflow is slotting in a little bit to be part of that framework ecosystem. So as we layer on, DevLink is almost a brand term for that. Let's dance with React. Webflow can dance with React. And now something like HTMX comes along and it's like, right, that's another part of the stack. And Webflow is like slotting in here as with all these code solutions or big players on the code solutions front, and becoming a real deal and a really useful part of that stack, which is pretty cool. It'll be interesting to see how it develops and whether it gets, as people get more confident using the interchange between, using HTMX, using Wiz, having a back end on Xano, those kind of things, make sure that Webflow stays current in that stack rather than being a replaceable part of that stack, you know?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think Web HTMX fits in nicely, because you don't need to leave the Webflow published product, whereas with a lot of the other ones you do. And like so member stack gives you full use of the Webflow CMS using member stack, but Wiz you don't. Wiz completely bypasses the Webflow CMS, and they have their reasons for it. They use the third party CMS. Whereas this is why I'm liking the idea of HTMX, is because it does, so far it fits quite nicely with the Webflow CMS, and being able to utilize the Webflow CMS to add functionality. So yeah, it's interesting. So like it's
Yeah,
early
it's
days.
exciting. It's just
I've only done I've done a fair bit actually, but it's early, and it's like, yeah, it quacks like React, but it doesn't. It's all in Webflow, which is the holy grail in my opinion. Like DevLink moving Webflow components out of Webflow is cool, but it's not the holy grail. The holy grail is getting that functionality into Webflow the way Wiz have done it, the way they have brought that functionality into
Webflow. So, Brian, if you're listening, if you're still listening, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on how it compares with your DevLink product. Ailín thinks it might be the next best thing since sliced toast.
Cathartic, I said.
But who knows? Maybe cathartic.
I looked up before the podcast.
Meditative. Okay, well, I thought that was a good session. I learned a lot there, and if it wasn't 5:20, I would probably jump into that now and spin up something and try and work out how it works. But what I'll do, I'll put it on my note, and I will maybe investigate it tomorrow when I've got a bit of time. So thanks for taking me through that. And I'm sure the WhatsApp group now will be not how do I best sell this proposal to a client, but what the hell does this error mean in the console when I'm running HTMX, Ailín? Tell me, help me, please. Right, until another week. Bye.
Bye.